Welcome back to Sports Talk ATL. I am Alex Lord. That is Chase Earl. We got a lot of football. The SEC just released their dates for the 2024 season. Got a lot of stuff to break down there. But we're going to start with the Falcons and Arthur Smith in particular. A report surfaced from Jeremy Fowler of ESPN, and it basically says that Smith's safe for 2024, barring some collapse over these next 4 games. What that entails, I don't really know. Chase, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think this is what we've been saying about Arthur Smith's job, that it's probably safe, knowing Arthur Blank, knowing that the expectations, these are the first time they've really had them. I know a lot of people are upset with Smith, but if you look at the first 2 years, there were a lot of things to like considering the roster construction. This year's been a little bit of a disappointment, but then again, you're talking about Desmond Ridder under center. So it's like, do you want to at least give him a shot with a more capable quarterback? And I think that's something they should probably do. So I'm not too surprised by this, but then think about what technically is a late season collapse. You blow a game against the Buccaneers that would have given you basically the division right there. I mean, I know that the odds were at like 85% or whatever they were, but I think they would have been closer to 90. You really would just need to win this game against the Panthers. You'd have the tiebreaker over your division rivals that are chasing you down. And you pretty much have the division in the bag unless someone went 4-0, which probably isn't going to happen knowing that they're 6-7. But now you lose that game, and now you got a Panthers game on the road. You lose this one, that's a late season collapse to me. I mean, you lose a game at home where you have a chance to basically clinch the division, and then you go the next week and lose to a 1-12 Panthers team. I mean, to me, that's the definition of a late season collapse, because now your playoff hopes, for all intents and purposes, are dashed. So to me, it's like, what is a late season collapse? Because that is the definition of a late season collapse if you lose back-to-back weeks. And I think this Panthers game is going to tell us a lot. With the win, I don't know if the Falcons will get in the playoffs, but I think you can say Arthur Smith's job is safe. With a loss, I think we're really having serious conversations next week about this report and whether Arthur Smith's job, how hot the seat is over the last 3 weeks.
Yeah, I think that, a lot of Falcons fans are knee-jerky, reactionary because they have nothing on the line. Whereas Arthur Blank has everything on the line. You don't want to pull the trigger too early. You certainly don't want to be late. But arguably being late to the party might not be as bad as being early, because the likelihood that you're early and you're right is very, very slim. Now, I'm not saying Arthur Smith is the guy, because to me, I said it before, I'll say it again. He's a meh head coach. He's an average head coach. At best, he's a slightly above average in some facets and slightly below average in other facets. And I think that what it comes down to is the quarterback position. If we had a top 10 caliber quarterback, I'm talking the elite quarterbacks. This is all hypothetical. It is kind of silly, but Justin Herbert. Arthur Smith would look like a genius with Justin Herbert. I can guarantee you we would not be having this same conversation if we had a rock star quarterback that could make up for the deficiencies in Arthur Smith's system. That is just a fact. Whereas Desmond Ridder isn't necessarily covering up those deficiencies for his play caller. Now, I think, a late season collapse could be characterized as anything. I think some people, including myself, would argue that Buccaneers loss should be considered a collapse, because there was multiple instances on offense, defense, and special teams where the Falcons could have come up big. On the opening drive, all the way through the last drive, there was instances where they could have won games, leaving 4 points on the board in the opening drive. Desmond Ridder missing a wide open Bijan Robinson. Younghoe Koo uncharacteristically missing 2 field goals. The Falcons defense had held the Bucs and Baker Mayfield in check the entire second half, and then they give up that game-winning drive. So there's so many different instances where you're like, oh, if they had just done that one thing right, they would have won that football game. Hell, even on the Falcons' last drive, they nearly, I don't know why you're throwing it short of the end zone on the last play of the game, but they nearly got it in the end zone right there in the last play. So, yeah, I think you could characterize that as almost a collapse. But given the fact that the Falcons' playoff chances are still alive, they're still alive. They still have hopes. And it's good hopes. I think the Bucs, Saints, and Falcons are all around like 40-ish% to make the playoffs. So, I think that to make a resounding statement and firing Arthur Smith after that game is just fans disliking Arthur Smith personally, especially with the shortcomings in terms of on the field wins and losses. But I think this game right here, I don't think it's crazy to say that this could potentially be Arthur Smith's funeral if he loses this game. And especially how they lose this game. If they're continually making the same mistakes, fumbling, turnovers, and self-inflicted wounds, this could spell the end.
Yeah, and I mean, there's things to like about Arthur Smith's offense. I mean,
Yeah,
I think he has 5 games I saw this morning where they have over 400 yards, which is third in the league. So there's been moments where the Falcons' offense has looked like a well-oiled machine, despite having Desmond Ridder at quarterback. And between the 20s, this team's one of the best offenses in the league. It's when they get in the red zone and Desmond Ridder and the field shrinks and stuff like that. So I think things need to change from an aspect of you got to get a passing coordinator in there. Like you got to get maybe another offensive mind in there to help you out with things that you lack, Arthur Smith. And he needs to take a look at the mirror and say, some of this is on me and we got to change that. But I think some of those things are fixable just with other coaching changes rather than tearing it all down right now and starting all over, because that is what it is. As much as people want to act like bringing a new coach and he's just going to take us to 11-5 or 12-5 now that there's 17 games, that doesn't happen very often. I mean, go look at the Panthers. I mean, they're finding a new coach every single year, and they just keep getting worse and worse and worse, and nobody knows what the hell their direction is, and everyone recognizes David Tepper as a hasty owner. And not only that, who would want to go coach the Panthers right now? Outside of Bryce Young, who we still believe to have some talent, why would you want to go to the Panthers? Because that's not a situation that's going to get fixed in a season. And you might get fired even if you do a good job and take a 1-12 team or a 1-16 team at the end of the year to 4, 5, 6 wins next year. You still might be on the hot seat. So you don't want to, and Arthur Blank doesn't have that reputation at all. So that's not something he's going to develop, even if he does make this decision. But tearing it down and starting from scratch is a lot easier said than done. You might ruin your season next year. It might make this a 2-year process. You're still going to have to find a quarterback. You're going to change coordinators. Ryan Nielsen's gone. All the progress of the defense is gone. So there's a lot of things that you have to take into consideration. I think it's much easier to go find coordinators and stuff like that that can help out Arthur Smith, whose offense has shown promise at times, but really needs to get better at the red zone. And some of that will also be fixed if you get a new quarterback. So I'm not hastily saying Arthur Smith needs to get fired, but I will say, you lose to the Panthers. There's just been one too many games this entire season where we've looked in the mirror and said, hey, this is a big game. We need to win it, whether it's the Vikings game, the Cardinals game, the Panthers this week. Think back to the Titans game where they shouldn't be losing these games and they've lost them and they've dropped them and they're why we're in this position. If you do it again, kind of, especially when this report comes out, it's almost like Arthur Blank is telling the media. This came out, I think, for a reason. Like, hey, don't screw this up. Don't lose to the Panthers. If you're good, I'm not even saying win the division. Don't lose to the Panthers this week. Do not embarrass us against a team without a head coach that's 1-12. And I'm not saying that's a guarantee, but I do think there's a reason this came out when it did. And maybe it gives him a little confidence going into the game. He doesn't feel as much pressure. But at the same time, that's the way it looks to me. And it might not be that way because it could be you still lose to the Panthers and they're going to see if all the players give up on you. And if they don't give up on you, your job's still safe. But this Panthers game, it'll change the narrative right now. I know right now he's safe, but this Panthers game, you got to look at it that way.
Yeah, I think the pulse in the locker room is a very important aspect of a coach's, job security. And Dan Quinn never lost a locker room one time. And that's why Arthur Blank probably held onto him too long, despite the middling results. Middling might be, a compliment, honestly, because they were terrible results. And it seems that Arthur Smith, the guys, we're friends with Slade Bolton, was on the team, says Art's a really good guy, guy's guy. And that might be the case where the locker room's always going to have Arthur Smith's back. But the fact of the matter is this is a results-based job. And eventually you're going to have to turn in a playoff caliber season. Now, I think to your point that the playoffs aren't going to dictate Arthur Smith's job security. What I think it'll dictate is the leash he has next year. So let's say he does make it. He'll have a little bit longer of a leash next year. Let's say they don't make it. They beat the Panthers, which we absolutely should, but somehow lose a season finale in and win type deal against the Saints in New Orleans, which is always a difficult place to play. No matter what the circumstances of the teams, they both hate each other, and the Dome is incredibly difficult to play in. They say they lose a close game there, and they don't get in the playoffs. I still don't think that his job is in serious jeopardy even next year, because I think that Arthur Smith, though he wants tangible improvement, certainly, I think that a lot that goes into, Arthur Blank's fixation around the team honestly like ethos and the direction of the team more so than the actual results. At least in this juncture, like you started this entire segment off, this is a very different place year 3 than it was year 2. There was actual expectations here, and even still, Arthur Blank may be verbally behind Desmond Ridder, but he's having the same thoughts as a lot of fans are when he's watching Desmond Ridder turn the ball over, leading the league in turnover worthy plays. He's having the same thoughts. So though he's verbally and publicly behind Desmond Ridder, which he should be, behind the scenes, it could be a totally different conversation, especially going into the offseason. So Arthur Smith's job is not, I think, even in jeopardy. Ridder's is certainly in jeopardy over these next 4 games.
Yeah, no doubt. But we're going to talk after the break. How desirable is this Falcons job if the job does become open? I think it's one of the most desirable in the NFL.